All that is to say, if you find yourself graduating from college or at any point and are like, what the heck am I doing? That is exactly what happened to me. And it's fine. You'll figure it out. I don't regret those like wandering years whatsoever.
Yes.
But anyway, long story short, I finally like reached a point where I was just like, oh, I need to do something, have some momentum. So I came to New York and did the Summer Publishing Institute for 6 weeks. And then right out of that, started working at this company. And it was like pretty random how I ended up working there. I looked up the CEO's email online.
The company being the one we worked at
Yes,
together.
it happened to be listed, asked if they were hiring for anything, and they were hiring for a salesperson. Bear in mind, that is by no means what I had intended on going into. I thought I was going to be in book publishing.
You probably dodged a bullet.
Yeah, thriving industry. I don't know if you've heard. But yeah, for whatever reason, I like had coffee with this guy and I was just like, this just seems fun. This seems more different. And
Right.
the sales I knew from the beginning would not be really cut and dry. It was creative from the beginning because we were like integrating it into the editorial that we were doing.
Sure.
And that's why I worked really close with Chelsea because she led that process.
Right. Yeah, I was working on the editorial side. Like basically a brand would come to the company and I would work with the sales team to help decide like what that campaign would look like.
So we were doing that together at this media company and we worked with a huge range of clients, like a bunch of movies that you would recognize, like random alcohol brands, like really across
really
the board.
random
and
alcohol
some
brands.
really kooky experiences.
Fun fact, we actually worked with one alcohol brand that of course will not be named, but we worked with that brand for several months and none of us ever to date have ever seen this alcohol in a store or a bar.
That was some kind of CIA operation to test the limits of media ad buys. I would say.
Or a hallucination. Don't forget collective hallucination is possible.
Yeah.
I actually think that's an interesting question for us to talk about and for people to hear. Like, what do we say no to? Like, what makes us say no to things? Like, where are the limits? Because I think it's very much, a case by case kind of thing. And we've talked recently about like, we feel like we should really, nail down exactly what those limits are, but it can be very gray in each situation. So I'm curious as to like what you think about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one thing that's pretty obvious is that we don't promote anything that we think is like really egregiously luxurious. We're not going to show $500 sunglasses. Like we're just not going to do that because we wouldn't recommend that to our audience as part of a sound financial plan.
That being said, there could be very expensive items that would fall into a sound financial plan.
Yeah.
So exactly. So it's not like you couldn't say like a price point.
It's true. Yeah. And of course, our whole ethos is that anything can be part of a plan if it fits for you. But our assumption based on the age and like circumstances of most of our audience is that they're not in that position. If you can afford it, no judgment.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like it's interesting because I often watch, YouTube is a really good example because the average person who's watched YouTube has watched YouTube creators like promote products. And a lot of times you can really tell that like it's not even comfortable for them.
Right.
But you do really realize like we've said no even pretty recently to a brand that kind of from the get-go is a little bit different than what we usually do, but like some of their messaging, and we won't get into the messaging because that would be too revealing of who the brand was, but as we got into the process, we were like, ooh, this probably doesn't really sound like us. It doesn't sound like something that we would endorse. And so not only do you have to have the uncomfortable conversation with the client of saying like, I'm sorry, but we just can't run this as it is. You have to, in the case that you've received the money, return the money. So it can be a very, like even for someone at our position who has the financial ability to say no and who has a team of people, it can feel very hard and uncomfortable. So I can totally see how like, if you're just an average creator working by yourself oftentimes, like, and this is your salary basically, like that could be really difficult. So I have empathy, and I feel like a lot of times audiences can be really hard on creators who maybe don't always like hit it out of the park with, their ads, because that's how they make their living in most cases.
Totally. I mean, one thing that I think a lot of people don't appreciate that often is that content didn't used to be free. And now everything is free and people just expect that. And in some ways that's a beautiful thing and has democratized the internet. At the same time, I think people literally forget that creators have to pay themselves somehow.
Yeah. And I think they can even in some cases maybe begrudge it.
Totally, but it's like, where do where do you think
Do
they
you
can
feel like these
get the
people,
money from?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and it, I mean, for me at least, it's always felt like kind of a really kind of a Scylla and Charybdis situation in the sense of like, I've never necessarily felt comfortable with something like a Patreon for us because we are able to sustain ourselves through ad revenue, and we do discourage people from spending on a lot of things. So I don't want to then turn around and say, but spend on us.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that that's totally right, because I could also make the argument that we're providing something that is really great for, and we want to pay everyone, and we do pay everyone a very competitive salary. But then on the other hand, like, I also, I know that, even the most well-done partnerships will open you up to that same criticism. So you can often feel like there's no way to win. And I think that in some consumers' minds, like especially consumers who will use something like ad block, even on sites that they love, that they know are run, it's like, you're basically, what you're saying to that creator is like, I want what you're making, but I don't think you deserve to make a living from it, you know? So, it's just like, you have to figure out what does the sustainable model look like,
Yeah, I mean, imagine if like all car services were free. You just had to like watch a commercial in them. Like, that'd be an insane business model. That's
I'd
media,
love that.
you guys.
I would take that.
Yeah. And I think it's also people don't have any sense of like how much these ads make. And so like the pre-roll, the ads that play automatically at the beginning of videos, those make barely anything. That's like an automated.
They really don't.
Yeah.
I actually, fun fact. So I heard, so we have one thing that's been really cool about talking about money so openly is that I've found when I've spoken with other creators, whether on or off camera at industry events, they've been really forthcoming about money and what they earn on their channels. And I have heard so many anecdotes about really big creators that you guys have almost certainly heard of, who in the earlier days of their channel were making videos for brands where they were getting millions of views on these videos, and they were literally being compensated with free products.
Yeah.
And
it's a very exploitative world
very
out there.
exploitative. And when I look at the rate cards that a lot of these other creators are being given by their agencies, like, they're often being charged, a third to a quarter of what they really should be charging if a publication were charging for that same viewership. So I think a lot of it comes down to like, everyone being a little bit more transparent so that everyone can benefit, because right now you have a lot of people who don't even know what they have on their hands.